All right, this is a question that I legit get all the time. I mean, at least once or twice a week, somebody is asking me about their ability to use somebody else's content or somebody else's ability to use their content with or without permission. And believe it or not, there are ways that you can use other people's content without their written consent and vice versa. In today's episode, I am going to be talking about fair use and what exactly that even means and how that can impact your work as a creator, business owner, and entrepreneur, as well as any digital endeavors. So what is fair use? Fair use is a legal doctrine that allows limited use of copyrighted material without the permission of the copyright owner. Yes. It is something of a loophole or way around copyright law. This concept is actually designed to balance both the rights of copyright holders and the public's interests in dissemination of information and ideas. Fair use is particularly relevant in the realm of education, research, news reporting, commentary, and parody. I'm sure you can see how this is directly relevant to the world of content creation and developing intellectual property assets. Unfortunately, there is not a very clear test that can be applied in an instant to determine whether or not something is fair use. It's not a yes or no situation. However, there are 4 factors that you'll consider and that a court would consider in determining whether or not a particular use qualifies for fair use and is therefore not considered a violation of the original copyright holder's rights. So let's get into these 4 factors. The first factor we're going to look at is the purpose and character of the use. First question is this used for commercial purposes or is it for a nonprofit educational purpose? It's more likely to qualify for fair use if it's not for a commercial purpose or a for-profit purpose. However, that's not to say it can never be fair use if it is being used commercially. Another question that you'll ask is the use transformative? Meaning, does it add a new expression or meaning to the original work, or is it simply a copy or a redistribution of that original work? For example, if you are creating a YouTube video reviewing a popular movie, you might consider using short clips from the film to highlight your points. Adding your own commentary and analysis can make the use transformative, thus qualifying it as fair use. So if you are just re-airing the film, it could be considered in competition with the original work and an exact duplicate of the original work. Therefore, it's not transformative in nature, meaning it's probably not fair use. But if you are adding your own commentary and analysis, as I mentioned, then it's more likely to qualify as fair use. The next factor we're going to look at is the nature of the copyrighted work. Is the work more factual or is it more creative? Fair use is more likely to apply in the case of a factual work as opposed to a work that is purely creative. For example, if you are creating a video to publish on social media or on your other online platforms discussing a recent news event, quoting brief excerpts from the news articles or using short clips from news broadcasts to provide context is more likely to be considered fair use, as these are factual, informative work. The third factor that you'll want to consider is the amount and substantiality of the portion used. How much of the original work is actually being used in your content? Using smaller, less significant portions is more likely to be considered a fair use. For example, in a podcast episode you're producing addressing a current event, you might play a short audio clip from a public speech or an interview to illustrate a point. Keeping the clip brief ensures that you're using only what's necessary in order to create your work that goes beyond the scope of that original work. Another common example is in the case of a YouTube video. If you want to include a short clip from your favorite movie within your YouTube video, is the YouTube video 2 minutes long and the clip itself 45 seconds long? That could be considered a substantial portion of the video itself. In contrast, if it is a 2-minute video and the clip is a second and a half, or if it's a 10-minute long video and the clip is a 10-second clip, the substantiality of that portion that's used is small. And finally, the fourth factor is the effect on the market for the original work. So you'll want to consider whether or not your use negatively impacts the market value of the original work. If the new use competes with the original, it's less likely to be considered fair use. So for example, let's say you are writing an article on your blog that includes a review of a new book. And in that review, you are quoting small sections of the book in order to support your analysis. Doing so, you're not republishing the book or writing your own book that could be in competition with that original book. So there's not an issue there. And publishing your review typically won't impact the book's market value, especially if your review is encouraging readers to actually buy the book. That's not to say you can't publish a negative review of a book or a movie or of any work that exists out there. I would just be cautious when it comes to including excerpts or clips from that work that you're reviewing. That could land you in some hot water that could otherwise be avoided if you just didn't include clips or excerpts altogether. So in digital marketing and content creation and business development, fair use can come into play in several ways. We talked about a few examples and scenarios that you might find this in. One is, of course, using images and videos. So using small portions of images or short clips from videos in your content can fall under fair use, especially if you're adding commentary or criticism that transforms the work that you're creating right now into something that is beyond that small clip that you're including. We mentioned quoting text and how including short quotes from articles or books to support your arguments or provide context can be considered fair use, especially in reviews or educational content. Keep in mind, you'll want to be sure to add your own analysis and insights in order to make the use transformative and not an exact republishing or duplication of the original work. And finally, parody and satire is a very common one. Creating parody content that mocks or critiques the original work is often protected under fair use. So an example of this includes perhaps creating a YouTube video that parodies a famous music video by changing the lyrics and adding some humorous commentary to transform that original work into something new and unique. All right, so I'm going to leave you with a few best practices just summarized to help you navigate fair use effectively as somebody who's engaged in content creation, digital marketing, building a business and brand online. Transformative use. Remember this. If you don't remember anything else, I want you to just remember this. Always aim to add new meaning or new value to that original work. So don't just republish it. Really aim to create something that goes beyond that original work and is a unique work that stands on its own. My next tip is to attribute sources. Even when using content under fair use, give credit to the original creator whenever possible. It's just the right thing to do. My third tip is to limit usage. When you're bringing in a video clip, an audio clip, or a text excerpt, use only the amount that is really necessary in order to make your point. The less content you're using, the more likely it is for it to be determined as fair use. And my final tip for you is to seek permission from the copyright holder if you have any doubt around the fairness of your use. So if you're unsure about whether or not your use would qualify as fair use under the law, it's best to just seek permission from the copyright holder and get their consent to using their content in your work. Hopefully by now you can see how fair use can be an incredibly powerful tool for content creators, digital marketers, and business builders, allowing creators to leverage existing works in order to inform, educate, and entertain their audiences. By understanding and respecting these principles of fair use, you can create compelling content while staying on the right side of the law. Trust me. That's the side you want to be on. Remember to always consider the purpose, nature, amount, and market effect of your use to ensure that your work qualifies as fair use and keeps you and your business out of legal hot water. If you found this episode helpful, please leave us a positive review. That is the best way you can support this channel and podcast. If you have a question about the topic that I discussed here, you can always leave me a comment on YouTube in the comments section of this video, or if you're listening to this on a podcast player, click the link in the show notes to send a question to us directly at The Business of Doing Business. Subscribe wherever you're listening, share this with a friend if you really loved it, and I will see you in the next episode. Talk to you soon.